Good morning. After a while, I'd like to talk about the present situation of the global systems. Now, my view is that there are two possible systems. One is the capitalism, which is global, and the other one is the socialism. Now, the socialism, so far, after the Soviet Union collapses all over the world. Now, what I mean by this, when I talking about socialism, I'm talking about the means of productions collective. And when I'm talking about capitalism, which is very simple, is the means of productions private. Now, the capitalism imposed itself all over the world nowadays, especially after the Second World War and after the Cold War against the Soviet Union, which was the alternative to the system that prevails. Now, I've been talking about the system that prevails and why it prevails. Now, one of the reasons is that the United States imposed itself all over the world, and with its living styles, Americans' way of living. Now that they expand all over the world after one or two generations after the World War, and especially when the socialist system was not strong enough to challenge that type of living. And this type of living that we have today is a capitalist way of living, and is not sustainable. And that's the reason that there are so many conflicts, because the conflicts they were in the history always about the sources, the resources. And then, of course, in centuries before, it was about the aristocracy and the land. But nowadays, the conflict is about the resources to make the system works. And to make the system works because they needed to obtain profits. And the profits are made by the consumption. And the consumption is all about the way of living. And the way of living is, I'm talking about cars, I'm talking about planes, I'm talking about luxuries, I'm talking about especially luxuries, because the capitalism needs to expand itself in order to obtain profits, but that it has limits, and also it produces conflicts. Now we have the world today with three main players, which happen to be to have nukes. One is the United States, the other is Russia and China. Now, those are the real challenge to the United States, but it's about the power, the political power, but the political power to sustain um, the American way of living. And and this is the big problem. Now, United States prevailed economically after the Second World War for about some 50 years, perhaps less, until the 70s. And when the Asian countries emerged and European reconstruct itself, the power of the United States. When I'm talking about the United States, in general, I have to think in corporations. And corporations are the manifestation of capital. And capital, it has its logics. They have to expand and they have to keep costs down. So we have the trend in the United States. We have to think always in the United States because it's the leading power. And the others follows its, let's call it, paradigm. So the logic of the capitalist is to make profit. And when the profit cannot be made in a particular country, they move. So the capital is moving around the world nowadays. And I'm trying to explain in few words, which is a very complex system, because I am talking about the industrial capitalism. Now, the industrial capitalism from the United States shifts to Asia and to many parts of the world through their American corporations. But then the challenge came from other capitalist, big capitalist corporations in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And now that's the world we have today. We have a terrible competition for the resources and for the profits. And as long as this is the system, we will have conflicts. Now, perhaps we'll have conflicts anyway, even in socialist world, but that is wishful thinking, because so far the capitalism is well and alive, and is revolutionary in the sense that mutate itself, and there is not such a blueprint. Now, the profit and the need to prevail over others, corporations, makes the world very unstable. But all of this profit of corporations are made by the consumption, and the consumption is through the way of living, which is a very unsustainable, because it's getting it's not sober at all. Now I employ sober because the austerity is taking a different meaning of what it's Lacan say the significant and the signifier. So the austerity might be we should think it in Lacanian's way. But so I'm playing the sober or simple way of living, and in the future that may be some of the behavior in order to have a better world. Now people don't behave thinking about a better world. People behave about thinking about themselves, and the nations are an abstraction. There's groups of macro groups, and those macro groups are formed by different groups and interests, and that's the way people behave. Now in the last 20 years or so, there is a branch of the economic science that is called behavior economics. So they come economists, they come to the conclusion that there is another rational system, like was in the thought by the classical thinkers. So the behavior is not rational, it's emotional. This is another topic that is it was produced by the advertising in order to consume. Now I'm trying to explain this in very few minutes and the simple way I can, but it's a complex system, like life is a complex system, like biology is a complex system. Everything we look at is enormously, terribly complex, and it is taken advantage by the politicians, because complex systems have to be traduced to the people, to the voters, in very simple terms, and they have to appeal to their emotions, because it's very difficult to have the great majority to understand. How people can understand the financial flows, the financial settlements. Even economists have hard times to understand it. So now we are in the financial in the financial, let's say, I'm trying to find the words. Probably in the financial period, in the financial times of the capitalism. Now, nothing is pure, because we have the industrial capitalism, the financial capitalism, and the ones who prevail in a given moment, but it shift. Now, my conclusion is that as long as we have this system, we'll have conflicts. But the conflicts today, especially in the big powers, is so dangerous. And that's where we are now, because they might explode into a nuclear, let's call it holocaust, which is a possibility. And the other possibility is that this system will go on for another generations until it exhausts itself. But we have the climate, the climate change, and it's not addressed properly. So we have those two big problems. and they have to be solved. And this is the challenge. And my question is, are the leaders and the people, especially the informed people, and the population at large, ready to change all those two challenges? Well, we'll see. The future might tell. I'm trying to make it this short, but it seems to me very, very difficult by the complexity of of these matters. So I will try to do short talks. Let's call it talks. And life goes on, and the drama of life itself. And what I'm talking about, economics and geoeconomics and geopolitics and geostrategy and world conflict, now we translate it into the life of peoples. That's where the big drama is. And we will see it in the clashes of powers. The one who suffers are the people, and especially of the weaker nations. And in those nations, it's not the whole nation that suffer. The vulnerable suffer. So that's the one who emigrates. And that's the drama of life. And collectively, we can do something to lessen that drama. But my perception is that people are, the great majority, the behavior of groups is based on the position in life or the self-interest, and they cannot, in general terms, it's very difficult to the great majority to understand what's going on in other places. And so that's the way we live, and that's the way life is. And hoping to have a better world. We'll see. Thank you.